next.
Meters.
So Vectis is two-phase encounter. Um, the big deal with this fight is Omega Vector. It is a debuff that will last for 10 seconds, and it deals moderate damage. When it expires, it jumps to the closest player, and it will leave a stack of lingering infection, which increases your nature damage taken by 5%. This is going to go out in a set of 3. So 3 players are going to get Omega Vector. He casts this like a couple seconds into the fight, and then after 10 seconds, those are going to expire and jump to the closest person. A single person can have all 3 stacks on them at one time, in which case, when those end, they're going to get 3 lingering infections. We don't want that to happen. Ideally, the 3 players will have it set to where the 3 players get a marker over their head and they can spread around the group. We're going to stack up like a group like this for easier healing. If somebody gets like way ahead of everybody on stacks, we'll have them step out of the group and stand off by themselves, so they're not going to get, so it doesn't get passed to them anymore for a while. The other ability that he does is Gestate, which is he puts it on a random player. That player is stunned for 6 seconds, 8 seconds. I don't have it written down here.
As I say, I think it works like the Garathi Worldbreaker mythic version of the circle or whatever.
Yeah, it's essentially like that. Like, you get stunned in place and you pulse damage to anybody within 5 yards. So, so you pulse that damage. So basically, we're going to have those 2 marks like they did. Every time Gestate goes out, everybody runs to the other marker, except for, of course, for the person who's stunned in place. It deals a moderate amount of damage. It's not going to be lethal, but just based on the way the fight works, we want to limit that damage. When the debuff drops off, it's going to spawn that ad that you're seeing there, the Plague Amalgam. These need to be tanked. They're going to chain cast immunosuppression. It cannot be interrupted. This puts a fairly large healing absorb on the entire raid every time they cast this, so we want to kill these as quickly as possible. And then the last ability that the boss does is Contagion. This is raid-wide damage. That is nature damage. So this is where that lingering infection, 5% nature damage comes into play. So the Contagion is nature damage. So every stack people have, there was the Contagion there, the big effect explosion that he did. So once you've got, 5, 6, 7 stacks of this, the Contagion is going to hit a lot harder. It starts out hitting about for half of everybody's health, but as you go through the fight and get a lot more stacks, it's going to be, by the time we get towards the end, it's going to be nearly lethal. If we haven't managed our stacks pretty well. You can see they actually lost a couple of people on that one. So pretty much the rhythm for phase 1. The boss is going to cast Gestate, so it's going to be pulsing the damage, so we want to move out of that, because that's going to be some damage. Then the ad's going to spawn, and he's going to start putting the healing absorb on everybody. So that's going to fight the healers to topping everybody off if everybody's taking a bunch of Gestate damage. If we move out of it, and then the healers just have to heal off the healing absorb, because it's important to have everybody topped off before the Contagion comes in, which is going to be about 10 to 15 seconds after the ad spawns. And it's not like a random type thing. I've actually got a little image up in the Discord. He just goes through a rhythm of casting those 2 things, the Gestate, and then the Contagion, and then the ad's going to cast that immunosuppression. If we leave the ad up too long, and we get the immunosuppression when the next Gestate goes out, and that's pulsing damage, it's going to get really kind of hectic on the healers being able to get through all of those absorbs and get everybody topped up. Um, so then on a timer, he's going to go into phase 2. Phase 2, he basically like turns into a puddle um, on the ground. We've got to finish off. There's always going to be an ad that spawns right before he goes into phase 2. I think he's going to do it here. Let's see. Yeah, here he goes. So he's casting this. Nope, dang it. All right. So, anyways, so he turns into a puddle.
I'll try to go back to a point in the fight where it was in phase 2.
Yeah, I think he did it earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, so phase 2 is basically 2 mechanics. There's the boss turns into a puddle and will like move off to one of the corners of the room. If you get hit by his puddle, you're going to get an extra stack of the lingering infection. And then once he reaches his corner, all those waves, he's going to send those out at random players. If we are all stacked up, all of the waves are going to come at the group. So we want to kind of spread out like in an arc as best we can to make it easier for everybody to dodge those. The other mechanic are those circles that spawn everywhere. Those have to be soaked. If they are not soaked, you can see there they've got an ad up. An ad spawns if one of those circles isn't soaked when it ends. So this is where stacks of lingering infection can really get out of hand if you get hit by like a lot of those waves. Or extra ads is going to make it harder too, because they're going to be casting that immunosuppression. So it's important that we're soaking those, but at the same time, we got to be kind of watching the direction that the waves are coming from and dancing left and right. Obviously, the healer here is trying to heal and isn't really even looking at the puddle. He's just taking waves constantly there. So that's what we want to try and avoid, because if you come out of this with like 10 stacks, yeah, well, they've got people with 6 stacks, 5 stacks. I think that's their little counter there up in the top left for the stacks people have. So the big thing with this fight is going to be kind of minimizing those stacks in phase 2, and then phase 1 we can manage fairly well with our positioning. And like coming out of that, if there was somebody with 8 stacks, we would say, Frosty, you've got 8 stacks. Go stand over to the side. Make sure you don't get the Omega Vector or something like that.